Trystie's Quest, or Kit, King of the Pigwidgeons. By Greville MacDonald. Chapter 24. Davy is decorated and Kit is given a commission, Captain Leprechaun's grief, home again and the beginning of new stories. Trystie, said the Queen, your quest is almost completed. Kit has won his day also, haven't you, Kit? I don't know, Godmother, I don't know what I've won. But I'd rather be your godboy than King of the Pigwidgeons any day. This was said as the flames were dying down. In a few seconds there was nothing left of them but little red and yellow tulips held up by their pointed green leaves, while the dawn glowed beyond and above in radiant rose color. The children watched the fairy ships sail away down the river, and out at one of the archways of the Queen's castle, into the moat beyond, and away to share in the earth's welcoming of the risen sun. They were all standing just where they had left Robin playing with the pups and the kittens, and where the blackbirds in green jackets, perched on the end of the sweeping bough of the beech tree, had been singing the nursery rhymes. The child did not seem to have missed his sister, but when he saw Kit, he rushed at him. The bigger boy dropped on his knees and they reveled in a baby hug. Then there was a scamper in the beech tree above, a scamper and a twitter-chatter of many birds. The three children looked up and saw, trotting down and along the bough, Sir Squirrel and his dame and their 4 squirrelies. On Sir Squirrel's back, of course, was Davy singing at the top of his happy voice. He dismounted, and Trystie caught him as he jumped to the ground. Then the 2 bigger boys, both at once, began telling each other their adventures. Trystie stood quietly aside listening. She was utterly happy with her godmother's strong arm holding her close. Robin still was absorbed in his airball, as though his bit of blue sky had more wonder in it than anything his brothers could tell. The leprechaun turned away and pulled his red hood down over his eyes. Behind him Curdie sat on his haunches, with his uplifted nose resting upon the little ferryman's shoulder, and his eyes turned towards the hidden face. For the moment the dog's heart seemed to be more at home with the one person's sorrow than the menace happiness. The leprechaun would, I think, have given up at this moment all his rule over springs and rivers, all his skill with lapstone and ships, perhaps even his hopes of getting back to Old Ireland some day, could he have belonged to that happy family group, or even, perhaps, might he wait upon and protect and mend the shoes of our big little girl. Davy suddenly stopped his chatter with Kit and came up to the Queen. He made a low bow. Please, my Majesty, he began, but the strong shining lady with the great wings which seemed to be everywhere, took his face in her hands and said, I am your godmother, too, Davy, or there would have been no fairy cross for you to win. Oh please, thank you, Kit, don't tell mother first, but, Majesty Godmother, I wanted to say thank you for making me captain, but I couldn't help what I did, it just came to do, and made me. I know, Davy, answered the Queen very tenderly, but children win the fairy cross for what they are and what they become, not for what they do. You had got brave and so just had to help Sir Squirrel. Then the Queen took out of her bosom a little shining jewel and put it into Davy's hand. Captain, called the Queen, a string from your belt, please, if you can spare one. So the brave ferryman had to come into the group and thread the cross with one of his strands, spun from the spray of the waterbrooks, and fasten it round Davy's neck. There the jewel will remain always, though none can see it but the people who love him best. Godmother, then asked Davy, radiantly happy, is there no fairy cross for Kit? Kit, she answered, has learned what it is to be afraid. It was for that he had to come to Fairyland. Kit, she added, I have a commission for you also. You are to be my own shepherd boy. My sheep are yours to tend. The recorder which Jonas gave you, though we were all along keeping it for you, is yours for always. Is that enough? Kit just knelt at her feet, and covered her hand with his biggest kisses. Then while Kit was still holding her hand, the Queen, her voice so full of tenderness and smiles, told them more things. In my country, she said, which is everybody's country when they find it, very often each of 2 things may be better than the other, just because both of them are best. The fairy cross is the best thing for Davy, the recorder is the best thing that Kit could have. Davy is best to fight for me because he has learned how not to be afraid. Kit is best to tend my sheep because, having learned what fear means, he knows better than before how to be very merciful. Davy will perhaps have to fight wolves and dragons for my sake. Kit will have to see that my sheep never forget Fairyland, and ring their bells bravely in tune. To do this Kit also will have to fight big battles for my sake. One will be the multiplication table, Kit, though you can't understand why, and Davy's first bravery, perhaps, will be to give Bully Butcher Broom a fine apple and to ask him to be friend. Both will be big things done for me, little lads, though much bigger ones will come when you are strong men." There was now a little silence. Even the birds stopped singing to think. It was here that Robin chimed in, speaking. "Trystie says, for the first time in Fairyland, Godmother," he asked, "mayn't Curdie have a blue airball like me?" "I think," replied the Queen, taking the dog's shaggy head in her hands, as if reading his answer, "I think my Lord Curdie would just let such a gift fly away home again into the sky. He says the best of 4 legs is that there are so many things he can have without holding, and less bother too. But, Davy, I have his reward in keeping for him, and he knows it, don't you, my Lord Doggy? It is something more to do for me and my godchildren." Curdie then made a fine speech by wagging himself all over. Then Kit said, "Godmother, what has Trystie won?" But his sister answered the question by nestling closer under the great wing. Then she looked up full of her great happiness. "Godmother," she said, "there is one more key. I think it must be Miss Duckling's." "Where is she?" "She's at home," said Davy. "I mean, in the squirrel's home." "Yes, your sweet majesty," said Dame Squirrel. "After the battle, I found her sitting behind our larder, quietly crying. She said she had tried to get ahead of the others to warn us, but fell behind. Then she was left, and would not go back home, as all the life there was horrible. So I asked her if she would like to be nursery governess to our squirrelies. Sir Squirrel wants me to go about with him more. But she must promise," I said, "never to give them lessons in crying. There's plenty of rain without tears, as we say up in the trees." She said she had no experience in washing faces or in lessons, but, if the children would first teach her their lessons, she would do her best to correct them. That fell in so nicely with Sir Squirrel's and my ideas about education that we immediately engaged her. Her only doubt as to her fitness was, she said, that she could never choose between one thing and another, so that things she didn't want would choose her. "That might be awkward, your majesty, when a polecat is in the neighborhood." "Yes, indeed it would," said the Queen, "but when she gets the little key Trystie has been keeping for her, everything will be different. It will be a safeguard to herself as well as the little ones against polecats and things like that. Besides, as long as she keeps it safely, she will grow prettier and happier and usefuler every day of her life. She will love the rain and my river, and will soon wash the little faces so cleverly that their eyes will get blacker and brighter every day, and they will never need to cry." Then Trystie gave Dame Squirrel Miss Duckling's key to carry to her. Her quest was now fulfilled. "Godmother," she asked, "do tell us where the river is. I don't quite understand." "Everywhere," the Queen answered, as she spread her great wings over all of them, the children and the squirrel family and Davy's playmates. "Don't you see it now flowing all about, in and out of the farm, up in the rafters of the barn among the owls, down in the dim castles of the mice, up in Sir Squirrel's free mansion in the tree, down in the dark mines of the moles? Little rills run into every bird's nest and every child's nursery. Where love and kindness flow, there is the river. Wherever the river runs, there is Fairyland. Everyone must some day come and drink of its water. Until they do this, they will never understand anything. Even now, godchildren, and all my own folk, 2-legged, winged, and 4-footed," here she looked down into Curdie's eyes, which could not leave her face, "you are in the river and the river is home." Trystie looked at the beech bough down which the squirrels and Davy had run. There, as she seemed to have expected, stood the kitchen dresser with the blue mugs and cups hanging in their right places. Her godmother's wing was soft and strong and shining all about her, and it held her close as she took the mugs and cups off their hooks and set them on the table for breakfast. Then running along the leafy top of the dresser she saw the squirrel family waving goodbye to her with their tails. Nothing was surprising in 2 things being in one place any more than in her setting the breakfast while she was in Fairyland. A great rush of new gladness swept into her heart as her own home became quite real to her. It was a joy, too, to see the river running through the old house, and out at the back door, and a tiny runnel of it into the old mouse hole. Yet, oh dear, there was her dear captain going slowly out by the door also, with his face in his hand. Curdie, who was sitting by her, started to follow him, but stopped and looked back into Trystie's face. The door and latch closed softly. "Captain," "Darling Captain," Trystie cried after her friend, in most earnest appeal, "stay with us, please, please." Then the long string of the wooden latch hung low for the children's sake was pulled and the door opened a half-inch again, as if the departing guest were coming back. But he did not return, and Trystie heard little leaping soft footsteps running along the brick path. She ran to the door, threw it open, and sped round to the front, but only to see her cobbler knight already halfway up the grassy hill beyond the cornfield. "Curdie," she cried, after him, "and make him come home." Curdie obeyed with a bound, leaped the gate into the road, and was gone in a flash. Trystie stood, shading her eyes and looking after her two friends. Curdie caught up with the leprechaun just as he reached the distant skyline. There, for one moment, the two stood together, taking, she thought, a last look upon the farm, and then they were gone. Trystie still stood looking after them for 1 minute, and then ran back to the kitchen. There, to her joy, stood her mother. No words were then spoken. There was, indeed, no need. The mother somehow knew in her heart that Trystie had been away on that far journey, the quest of the Choosekeys, which she used to say must someday be taken. She knew too that Trystie would in good time tell us all her wonderful story. She saw the shimmering blue shoes and felt them to be a promise that this time their wearer would not vanish again, a sure promise, even though the next moment the blue shoes were gone, leaving the child with only the one red shoe in her hand and 2 bare feet on the brick floor. "Trystie, child," said the mother, with the most welcoming kiss that ever warmed the heart of a come-home traveler, "run upstairs and dress yourself quickly." As the child turned to go, however, Kit's voice rang through the house. "Mother, I'm quite well again. May I get up?" Then Davy called out, "Me too, mother," and he began to sing at the top of his voice. Then Kit called out again, "But, I say, mother, my things are all in rags." They could not wait for permission, but ran down in their nightshirts. To their mother's joy they both looked quite well, though still very thin. Robin was a little behind, because he had waited to untie his airball from the foot of his cot and bring it with him. Then the mother fetched her grandmother's paisley shawl that always hangs over the end of the couch in the parlor, and was wrapping Trystie in it just as I came in. It was such a brilliant hot morning that, without waiting while the children dressed, we had the happiest and funniest and hungriest breakfast in our lives, the travelers all together trying to tell Honeypot and Kirsty their adventures. The loving nurse must have Prince Tom Tit and Princess Jenny Wren there too, and both of them, Trystie said, behaved just as sweetly as if they were still in the Fairy Queen's audience chamber. So great was the gladness, so merry the chatter, so quickly did Kirsty's floury scones and the yellow butter and the creamy milk in 5 mugs and 2 bottles disappear, that not one of them all yet realized that Curdie was not with them. The dog did not come back, and this is one of the many reasons why the story does not end here. Besides, a great number of new stories began that very morning. For in every cottage for miles round a new baby, such a sweet and smiling one, had arrived from somewhere out of fairyland during the night. But what had new babies to do with Pigwidgeons? Trystie and Kit thought they knew. The end. End of this chapter. End of the story. Thank you for listening.